Well, thank you so much for having me, Berty crew and friends. Super honor. We're huge fans. And yeah, I'm here to just tell you a little bit about Web3 native software distribution. I'm Alec. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Valist. I'm here with my team, Zach and Keenan. And yeah, let's just jump into it. So what is Web3 native software distribution? Well, basically, a lot of the similar elements to regular software distribution with some extra cherries on top. But basically, the fundamental elements are being able to publish some software, being able to fetch it, being able to securely update. But with Web3 now, we have DAO coordination and the ability to sell software licenses directly to consumers without any third parties or intermediaries like Apple's App Store or Steam in the case of Valve. But yeah, why do we need it? So let's just start with the obvious here. Like, we're still distributing all of our Web3 software over Web2. So I have a few screenshots here that I pulled together from some popular projects that I know we've all used before. On the left side, this is actually the Geth Ethereum.org download page. And the screenshot is basically demonstrating that it's fetching from a Microsoft Azure Blob Store server, which is just pretty ironic, right? Like this is Web3 and everything is kind of funneling back to these Web2 protocols at the end of the day. So another example is Go IPFS, the Ethers project, and pretty much any Web3 project you can name. I'm willing to bet some good money that it's still being distributed over Web2. So we're putting all this massive amount of effort and energy into decentralization and security and making sure everything is censorship resistant. But then we go and re-centralize it at the distribution level once we actually want to build it and share it. So what are some of the issues with this? Well, I'm sure there's a lot of obvious ones that we could think of, but just a couple off the top are risk of compromise. So if a rogue developer that is in charge of that website were to compromise the Geth node that they were distributing over Ethereum.org, then really any node running Geth from that version is at risk of compromise. And so we could introduce these network level bugs at the build stage, which would affect the entire network. So that's just a fundamentally big one right there. And then, of course, censorship risk. If Microsoft decided, hey, you know what? We don't want to support any public blockchain efforts. We're actually going to create our own Microsoft chain and start going really hard on advertising and marketing that and making sure that any of their competitors are no longer there. That could be unlikely, but it's definitely a possibility. GitHub has actually taken down security tools in the past because they are deemed dangerous, which as an InfoSec guy, I actually find completely nonsensical. So, and then there's also just general availability risk. We've all seen it, AWS going down, Google Cloud going down, Microsoft Azure going down. Like, even though it's so unlikely, it still happens. And we've seen it happen recently, even multiple times. And so everyone thinks, oh yeah, these big companies can't go down, but they do, and they have. So just from a general availability standpoint, decentralizing this can help a lot. But what can we do now that we're in Web3 that we couldn't do before? Well, at first, it looks pretty familiar. Actually, right here, in this meeting, I'm going to give a sneak peek to the V2 that we're releasing on Friday. But this is just kind of like the front end that we're about to launch with this. But it kind of looks like porting over common stuff from GitHub, Versal, and a few others that we all know and love. Some maybe not so much as others, but basically just getting the ability to get software up somewhere and pull it down again and version it and update them, as well as manage your team and project level access control. So really just a lot of this familiar namespacing, access control, basic software development lifecycle stuff when we port it over to Web3. But then Once we're ported over, we can start doing new things in Web3 that we couldn't do before. So again, the obvious one is we're no longer relying on a single entity for distribution. So, just kind of what I said before, even though thousands of people from around the world are working on Ethereum and other protocols, again, when we actually go to distribute it, it's in a centralized way. So now DAOs could coordinate these releases. So imagine a world where these blockchain nodes update themselves and people coordinate new releases together in a DAO format, and people run the builds locally and multiple times, submit their hash, and make sure that everyone is on the same page without, again, relying on a centralized team at the end of the day. So, just general tooling around Gnosis and MakerDAO and these things are massively important to our infrastructure. But then if we can keep those release processes also decentralized through these DAOs, then we could do some amazing things. And then with the advent of built-in payment inside of the network itself, right? You can monetize software directly without an app store or some kind of marketplace taking a fee. And with Valist, we're actually focusing more on game developers right now with this feature. But we have the ability you could create a software license. You could set how much you want to sell your game for. You could set up some kind of royalty if you'd like, and you can donate to a public goods funding treasury if you like from the sale of those NFTs. But basically, you could sell software directly to a consumer, and they could purchase it from you. And then you can activate a game by having that piece of software in your wallet. And there's also other clever ways where you can, for an open source project, you could say, hey, for the new release, I'm going to reserve 1,000 people that can check out the new release, because it's hard maintaining open source. If it's very popular, you could get burnt out very easily, especially when many, many people, and we kind of saw this with like the Log4j. That was a massive massive security vulnerability on an open source project that the maintainer basically just said, you know what, I'm not dealing with it. Whereas now that same developer can say, hey, I'm going to release a patch. It's going to be open source, but I can only manage so many requests at a time. So you can prioritize your pull requests and things like that if you'd like to. And kind of creating this like hybrid model with open source now, and new ways to fund open source versus just purely relying on donations, which is, in my opinion, something we've been doing for a long time, and it doesn't seem to be a sustainable business model for open source. So with this, you could create all kinds of new novel ways to monetize. And if you are selling proprietary software like a game, this works great. But the more fun stuff, especially for the folks on this call, is you can have secure auto update mechanisms powered by the smart contracts and IPFS. So let's say Berty, for example, you guys already have an auto update mechanism where you can push builds in. This is something that we've made generic for pretty much any type of software. So you can easily set up some kind of mechanism to listen for new releases and auto update whenever the new release is published. And this is all coordinated through these Web3 protocols. So taking it step towards more hardware related, you could imagine critical infrastructure being updated in this way. Things like Helium and WeatherXM are massively distributed hardware devices that need some way to update. And now they could do that with the very same protocols that they're already running on, versus having to fall back to a centralized system. And then I've already talked about this a bit, but we're dealing with Web3 protocols, so we don't have any payment processors to deal with. It's all just built into the network. So we could do clever things to come up with new public goods funding mechanisms. And one of the big things that we'd like to do with this is for people who are monetizing software and other video games and things like that, give them an option to take 1 or 2% of the revenue from that and put it in a DAO treasury, and in which that DAO treasury could be used to fund indie game development or open source software, you name it, basically. So we could create this self-fulfilling system and a regenerative system using these Web3 protocols, instead of falling back to things like tide lift, where you're basically paying extra for some form of support. We could do that just natively in these mechanisms. So I've talked a lot about the concepts, but like on a technical level, how does this actually work? So it's actually simpler than you might think. Basically, the developer publishes some release artifact, be it a binary, a package, or some other artifact that they like to release. They publish it on an IPFS, and we handle all of that as well. We have our own storage providers and make sure that it's still free for the user, and it's still decentralized. But basically, you upload the artifact to IPFS, and then you take the SID from that, and then you store it in a smart contract, basically. And the smart contract manages the namespace for the team. So just your team name, all the projects inside of it, and then all of the releases inside of those projects. And every time you do a version release, it's an immutable tag. So much like NPM and Rust's cargo, once you publish version 1.0.0, that's it. You can't override it and sneak some code into a release that next time their builds run, it's actually a different piece of software that they expect. And that's actually happened to me before on a project where we were relying on a Docker image where they mutated the tag, and it actually broke our build. So just from that perspective, it's all immutable. And the smart contract enforces your access control, making sure that you actually have permission to request a release or to publish it directly. And you can set it up both at the team level and the project level. So very similar to every other ACL system that we know and use. It's just hierarchical access control. But then you could also multi-sig if you'd like. So in theory, you could have a team that is actually behind it an entire DAO. So it's not restricted to individuals. It can be used as a completely decentralized system, but we just like to make it easy for people. And then once you publish it, really the clients are aware of all of the latest and greatest just because they're connected to these networks and they're already distributed. So from there, you could use these sets of tools that basically glue the protocols together to make all of our lives easier, so that you don't have to think about, I'm storing it here, I'm checking my access control here, I'm doing this, and this. It's basically just a set of tools where you could do a valist publish, or as you'll see in a little bit, you can go ahead and use a web app and drag and drop if you like. For game developers, that's more relevant. Or you could throw it in your CI/CD system and multi-sig it if you'd like, to where now your CI/CD has to verify and two other people, or however you'd like to set it up based off of your security model there. But at the end of the day, what Valist is here to do is to just make all of our lives easier and make it to where all these protocols work seamlessly together. So the way you use it is a set of SDKs. We have a TypeScript and Go SDK, and then we'll expand to other languages in the future. But that covers pretty much 70+% of the Web3 space. So we'll get to the Rust stuff soon and other languages, but those are the main ones we have right now. You could also directly talk to the protocols and the smart contracts and things like that if you'd like, but our SDKs make it super, super easy. And then we have a web front end, and then a CLI for just doing a valist publish locally, or being able to throw it in your CI/CD. We have a GitHub action just to make it easy for people, so you could just click install and add it to the very end of your release pipeline and go from there. And then you could implement it at a lower level as you'd like. And then just a basic set of APIs so that when you're actually running the daemon locally, you could query it just from a URL or just basic REST stuff. And then we also have a GraphQL API. So where do we find this? Basically, valist.io. You can definitely join our Discord and chat with us at valist.io/Discord. But the more fun stuff is all at GitHub at valist-io. And we actually run a few other community projects for, we're working on an Ethereum Light node that's powered by IPFS. And we also maintain some meta transaction helpers and things like that to where, we need to do these things anyway for ourselves. And we've kind of branched those out into community projects that we also rely on. So lots of cool stuff there to check out. Would love to see you there. But now it's demo time. So I'm actually going to give you a sneak peek again of the front end that we're releasing on Friday. This is actually Valist V2. We've made a lot of progress over the last year, and we've taken a lot of feedback from people. But effectively, this is what the dashboard looks like. So it looks very similar to a platform like Versal or Netlify. It's kind of what we were modeling it off of. We don't do a whole lot of, we don't do source control management. It's basically everything after the source control all the way to the end user. So you could still plug into tools like Radical or GitHub for your source control. But basically, yeah, as you manage your releases, your projects come up here. I don't have an ENS domain. This is a fresh key I just generated, but if you have an ENS domain, it'll show up here and it'll say, welcome back, A.WANTOCH.eth and things like that. But this is just a fresh key. And then on the right, you can see recent activity for what's been happening in your organization. But basically right here, I have this project called Hello World. It's a simple Go Hello World program. It's published under this team called Test 321. It's an awesome team that's super awesome. And again, we could kind of see the logs of what's happening in the team, and then we could go inside of the projects of that team, which is just a README here, that says Hello World program and Go, but we can actually go and browse the versions and see what's been published here. So I could see there's a version 001. There's the relevant IPFS hash that you could download directly, or we make it easy and you can go ahead and download it from a download button. And if you have multiple artifacts that you'd like to publish for a multi-platform build, let's say, it'll all show up here. And then again, you can see activity within that project, as well as all of the members that are able to publish inside of this project. So the front end, super simple. And then you could download with curl if you're running the daemon locally, or you can hit it from valist.io if you like. But yeah, I mean, it's super familiar feeling. And then you could also log in with an email address or your MetaMask or via Wallet Connect. So I'm going to stick with MetaMask, but if you're new to Web3 or you just want to get started, you could go ahead and log in with a magic email link, get started and start using it without installing any wallets or without any passphrases, things like seed phrases, things like that. So nice Web2 onboarding, but still progressively decentralized. So you can use any wallet. But yeah, let me just publish a release real quick and show you how that works. But basically, when you go to publish from the front end, you could do this from the SDK or the CLI if you'd like, but just for visual purposes, I'll show you the front end. You pick which team you're trying to publish to, you pick which project you're trying to publish under, and then you name your release. And so I've already got 001 uploaded, so I'll just go with 002 and say super advanced Hello World program. It's quite advanced for sure. But yeah, and then I'm just gonna pick the binary, and then to enable a multi-platform install, I know this is a Darwin build for ARM64, and We're still iterating a little bit on this, but basically the idea is as long as you map the artifacts to the platform that it should be installed on, then our SDKs and our APIs and everything else can handle detecting what platform that you're on and downloading the relevant one for you. So right now, I'm just going to click publish, and we actually use meta transactions. So you never have to pay gas to use this. All you have to do is create an Ethereum key, sign a message, and we handle everything for you. It's all based off of digital signatures, so there's no way for us to manipulate what you're publishing. All we do is wrap it in a real transaction and get started. So a lot of that has to do with us trying to treat our Ethereum keys more like developer keys. And as you can see, the transaction just published. But basically the idea is like we're using SSH keys for GitHub and for Linux servers and basically any other and PGP keys as well sometimes, but very few people still use PGP. But SSH keys are very common for people. We generate them, we give people our public keys, and that's kind of our developer identity. Whereas now your wallet can be your developer identity at the same time. And now when you look in someone's wallet, you could see everything they've contributed to. For example, if you look at Keenan's wallet, then you'll be able to see, oh, Keenan has contributed to Go IPFS a bunch and Vulcanize DB and many other projects. And now instead of having to go back to GitHub, you can just look in his wallet. And then the meta transactions just make it a lot easier for you. So even if you're a Web3 company, say you have 20 developers, to use smart contracts, you're going to have to issue actual Ether to everyone and manage the accounting and the taxes around that. And then if the developer's keys get stolen, that's a real monetary loss there. Whereas now you could just generate a fresh Ethereum key, call it like an SSH key, basically start using it, and there's not a financial risk, and there's no more accounting and tax burden on the actual organizations using this. So those are the couple things that we do to make it super easy for people to get started and make it much more familiar, but still fully decentralized throughout the entire stack. So if I just go here, then I guess I got to refresh here real quick, but I'll see the version 002 that I just published, and I could go ahead and download that version there. No problem. And I could also fetch it with SDKs and APIs and things like that. But yeah, I think that's about it for the demo here. But yeah, I would love to answer any questions or curiosities that anyone might have and just discuss some of these new things that we could do now that we're in Web3 land.
Thank you so much for this amazing talk, Alec. Guys, if you want to ask for question, maybe you can write it down in the meetup chat channel, because it's easier and everyone can read it. And maybe Alec, you can read the question and then answer it, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I see one question from Space. In terms of decentralized distribution of files, how does this compare to torrents? It's actually very, very similar. IPFS is basically the IPFS is kind of like taking BitTorrent and making it general purpose for being able to type in your web browser. IPFS : or IPNS : or going to some IPFS gateway for that. So it's actually very, very similar. There's a DHT the same way. So when you're actually looking up a file, you look it up by its hash and you request that from the network. And then basically the network starts responding like, oh, I have this hash. Or I might know someone who does, let me forward you. And then it all checks based off of the hash that you're looking for. And then once you've met a peer that has that file, then you're connected and you can download straight from them, and it uses a very cool algorithm called BitSwap to do that. But yeah, IPFS is very inspired by torrents, just trying to be more general purpose for web browsing, and so you could actually like host websites with it, and various other things. No problem. And it's my pleasure, Norman, too. It's my pleasure. Absolutely. All right. It looks like we might have another one coming here soon. My opinion on Radical. We actually really like Radical, and we've met them. We're friends with them. They are definitely solving a super hard problem with decentralized source control. And we actually went that route a little bit. And our lead software engineer, Keenan, was actually working on a project called Multiverse for a little while before he joined us. And it's a Git on IPFS client. But Radical is it's a really cool project. And basically, we're trying to solve everything from that point all the way to the end user. So you can integrate valist with Radical, and Radical decentralizes your source control, and then we decentralize pretty much everything else after that, from building to distribution to auto updates and basically the rest of the software development lifecycle. So we love Radical. Yeah, that's our opinion. No problem. Sweet, got a couple more coming. These are great questions, by the way. Thank you, everyone. Yes. Do we have a plan to support asset encryption? Yes, we do. Right now, we've built this in a way to where if you already have your own encryption schemes, you could still use them. We've tried to be less opinionated on it. There's quite a number of ways to do encryption, like end-to-end versus proxy re-encryption and things like that. We don't have encryption built into the protocol level. It would be basically like an overlay system to where when you go to publish, you encrypt that asset with the public keys of the teams that you want to be able to publish it to, and you could go from there. Or if you're using some proxy re-encryption stuff, you could do that too. But actually, we had a great discussion with the Berty team about using fully homomorphic encryption for this, so that you can then encrypt it and then still be able to redistribute it to everyone that needs it, and still have the security that you would need there. But basically, short answer, yes. Long answer is we tried to make it generic enough to where you could put your own encryption scheme on there, and then we'll have nice defaults and tooling around that to make it easy for you if you wanted to use our opinionated versions. But anyway, yeah, okay. So Space has another question. If you make some kind of mistake when configuring your distribution contracts, or your publishing keys get compromised, is there any way to remedy the mistakes and revoke the keys so users aren't at risk of malicious updates? Absolutely. Yes, that is a beautiful question. So that's something that we focused on a lot, is making it very easy to rotate keys, making it very obvious when something happens, and being able to broadcast to the rest of the network that this is a compromised release. You should no longer download it. And this is the one that you actually want. So basically, yes, there are key rotation mechanisms here. Everything is logged, so you can see exactly what happens. And then you can also flag certain releases and make sure that the rest of the network doesn't download it, and make sure that you're good to go. So even if your developers gets compromised, super quick rotation. And then if you want additional levels of security there, then you could go multi-sig, to where to publish a release, you might want 3 developers to just double check and make sure that it's good to go. Some teams might not like that because they're not moving as fast, but if you're working on security critical software, putting up that initial energy is going to be a lot more effective than trying to react to a compromise after the fact, right? So it's much more expensive and stressful, especially to react to a compromise after the fact, whereas now you can just multi-sig it and make sure that 3 of your developers um, confirmed it before it was released, or even a DAO. You can expand it to where thousands of people verify it, and you need at least 100 people to make sure it's the same hash. So then those kind of things drastically reduce the chance of a compromise, and make it so that even if you do get a key compromised, the multi-sig prevents catastrophic failure there. But yeah, amazing question. And yeah, another question is, what are your current or upcoming challenges at Valist? Yeah, so I actually we could definitely speak a lot about some engineering challenges that we've gone through over the past year. Obviously with Web3 distributed systems, they can be a little challenging to build on top of, just as far as like making sure when you publish it's fast, when you fetch it's fast. Those can actually be very complicated, and with IPFS we do some clever stuff like bootstrapping the peers to some of our nodes to make sure that even if you launch your own node, you can connect over no problem, and still have all the data available. The meta transactions, always a fun one for sure. But yeah, as far as our current challenges right now, is basically just making sure that our software license system is both generic enough and feature filled enough to cover most of the use cases. And so just being able to accept payment in Ether versus ERC20 tokens like DAI and USDC, and then setting up royalties and then making sure all of that works great. And then just, of course, making sure that people understand that Web3 is still definitely being distributed over Web2 is kind of one of those things that we like to shout off the top of the roof. So, but yeah, and then awesome. Thank you, Manfred, for these awesome questions as well. Do you expect Web2 actors to prefer Valist over their existing solution? And do you have a feeling of which advantage of those are the ones that resonate to most non-Web3 users in general? So yeah, basically, are Web2 people going to jump over to Valist? That is an amazing question. And actually, when we first started, we didn't really say Web3 native software distribution. We were actually going super hard on, this is a security tool. It's for supply chain attacks. It's for preventing key compromise and easy key rotation, and for basically needing to move away from public key infrastructure where you're relying on a certificate authority. That was actually our main focus, and we had pitched a lot to non-Web3 developers. And the thing that they liked the most, that stood out to them the most, was the IPFS pieces. The fact that you could fetch based off of a hash and coordinate based off of that really got Web2 people curious. Even the people who are like anti Web3, even they were like, oh, that's pretty neat. However, there's a lot of existing tooling out there to do these kinds of things, like obviously GitHub, and then there's I'm drawing a blank right now, but it is a yeah, maybe Zach or Keenan will remember, but Sigstore. That's right. Sigstore is a very up and coming one from the Linux Foundation to do digital signature based access control using OAuth. So a lot of Web2 folks kind of are excited about that, but about 8 months ago, we started more focusing on just, hey, look, if the vision of Web3 is actually true, then all those Web2 people will eventually come over, right? So we just fundamentally are basing ourselves off of that assumption. Like, we believe Web3 is the future. So then we started operating under those assumptions that, okay, eventually Web2 people will become Web3 people. And then we cater to the people who are in Web3 that don't have these features, as well as the Web3 curious. And then kind of our goal is to become a de facto tool to distribute software in Web3. And then as people come into Web3, then they would end up inevitably publishing with this tool. But yeah, the IPFS stuff resonated quite a bit. The key rotation stuff resonated quite a bit. And then there's also this really sneaky fact about Web 2 where certificate authorities power everything, right? All the green locks in your web browser. And there's 3 of them that issue basically 90% of all certificates. It's DigiCert, Intigo, and I forget the other one, but they basically do everything. However, you don't even need to compromise them to break the whole system. You could compromise any certificate authority, even a small one, and then you could start issuing certificates on behalf of other organizations like Google or Facebook. And so it's really only ever as strong as the weakest link. Whereas with smart contracts and multi-sig, it gets stronger the more people you add. Whereas with certificate authorities, the risk increases to an extent the more people you add. So there's this fundamental architectural problem there. And that resonates a lot with Web 2 people as well. Like certificate authorities definitely need some innovations for sure. And we could decentralize the root effectively with multi-sig. But yeah, sorry, that was kind of a long-winded answer. But anyway, yeah, great question. And do you have a plan for people that don't want to set up a wallet, et cetera, to make Web3 transparent and easier onboarding? Or is the product depending on that requirement? We actually have that today. So I could show you the Magic login that we have. We basically just use magic.link. And the basic flow here is when you go to select a wallet, I could type in Alec at valist.io. I could send that link. You check the email. Here, I'll stop sharing my screen real quick to click that. And then it's basically an email that you click a button. It says login with Valist. And then you go to back to the tab and you're logged in. So basically this is the wallet that I'm using now. This is a fresh key. So it's, I haven't published anything under this key yet, but to answer your question, yeah, that is fully possible right now. And so you could log in with your email, and then with the meta transactions, you could start publishing something without ever having to generate an Ethereum key yourself or manage your own wallet. You could just get started right away, no problem, and never even have to buy crypto or even set up a wallet or anything. You could use it even without knowing what those things are. So we focused a whole lot on usability there, and just general UX for just wallets in general. I actually worked on a wallet called Ethos before they were bought by Voyager, and it was one of the first universal wallets. And I'm very intimate with these like key management problems, and it's a huge pain. And expecting the average person to manage their keys is not super realistic. And then expecting developers to care that much to do that is also a risk. But there are always developers that want to manage their keys and that want to customize everything. Obviously, we all do, but we still acknowledge that there's an ease of use factor there. And Magic Link is pretty secure, so you could get started and start using it, but and then transition over to your non-custodial wallet down the line if you'd like. And then we support Wallet Connect as well. So you can use your mobile wallets. You could use a ledger through MetaMask if you like, or you could just use the email. So we try to make it with sane defaults, but also flexible. That's kind of our philosophy with a lot of these things. But yeah, great questions. Oh, and yes, Zach just chimed in, said Steam takes 30% from developers. That's pretty intense. That is Apple level intensity as far as the intermediaries go. So if you're an indie game developer, you're going to want to publish on Steam because of the marketplace, but you're losing a significant portion of your revenue there. And with Web3 gaming really heating up, Steam is just really not the solution for that. Things like Sandbox are already gating their game by purchasing some kind of license in the form of their Sandbox. I forget exactly what it was, but it's an NFT that you buy and then you can get access to the game. But there are already game developers doing this now in Web3, and so we just want to make it super easy for people there to where if they have a community, they can monetize it directly and create special versions maybe that are limited editions and go that route if they like. But yeah, exactly, Space. But yes, what about CLI authentication? Do we have a dedicated authentication mechanism that can be configured from the interface once authenticated? Or should we have to use some kind of wallet connect to our CI/CD tools? That is a very good question. With that, we have a couple options there. You could use a secret if you want to. With GitHub Actions, you could definitely do that. But if you don't want to do that, that's definitely fine. We also support key stores. And we are actually still working on Wallet Connect for the CLI. And Magic Link does not support the CLI, unfortunately. So really with the CLI, it's just a key pair that you plug into it. But if you want to add the security, then you can multi-sig it to where your CI/CD is one key out of 3 that needs to sign. You could do it that way. But then we're also working on some other ways to where you could do a transaction request from the CLI and then sign that with another wallet. We're moving towards that approach as well, to where now the CLI doesn't have to have any keys. And it just generates a request that then you could sign off from some other device. So your CI/CD could publish a request instead of being able to actually do anything, and then you pull out your ledger and you sign that if you'd like. So we're definitely trying to abstract that away as well on the CLI level, but for now it's just a key store that you use, or you could configure it as a secret in GitHub. But yeah, that's definitely something that we're very keen on making even more secure and efficient as well. But and yes, Space, to answer your question, it is free to publish an app through Valist. It is 100% free. Basically the way we run it is just we use IPFS nodes. We also use Filecoin Plus to archive a lot of that stuff. It's actually an incentivized program that Filecoin does to allow you to basically miners will store your files for free, and they will get extra incentives from the network. So we back up files there to where they'll always be available. And we just use multiple IPFS nodes, and then you could run your own if you'd like. But yeah, that's it is 100% free to use. And then really the monetization stuff just comes into play when you go and create a license and you're selling that. Our goal is to kind of bootstrap this into a decentralized system and have this eventually powered by a DAO, instead of running infrastructure as an organization. But basically everything, when you run the Valist tooling, you are effectively joining the Valist network and contributing to it. And so we can make it to where as long as a lot of people are running it, then the system will continue to run. You could plug it into your own infrastructure if you like, or you could use the shared infrastructure that's provided by the community and us. But yeah. And then yes, Keenan, release signing and approvals, and gating releases based on a set of trusted signers. Yes, so we have a mechanism to where if you release something, third parties can verify it or reject it based off of the calculations that they came up with for the hash. And so if someone, it's just a form of double checking and kind of making sure, it's a way to create sort of the blue check mark for certain software, to where now if you have multiple organizations verifying, hey, this is definitely the software that we trust, it was multi-sigged within the team, and then we also have 100 or 1,000 people verifying that that was also the same release. And so it's like a community form of verification there, which we could expand into DAO voting and things like that as well. And then gating releases on a set of trusted signers. I dabbled a little bit about that, but to expand on that, basically what you could do is if you know a certain organization, or you do trust a certain developers, or it's yourself, then you could actually gate the release based off of whether or not that signer published it. So you could say, hey, I know Pierre on the Berty team. I trust him. I would like to see him sign on this. Otherwise, I'm not going to, download that yet. So you could do things like that if you'd like. It really comes down to your security model and how you'd like to configure it. But, and then again, with like sane defaults that we provide. But yeah. And yes, Manfred, we are open source. And what kind of contributions have we received, and what kind of contributions would we love to receive? We've had some friends update documentation. That's been super helpful. That's something that we always we care a lot about. And we've had some folks help us with like Docker files and stuff like that, and just things like that. But we would love to see people toy with our SDK and expand on the SDK for these kinds of things for people's use cases. We've tried to design it to hit 80+% of the use cases that we deal with on a day-to-day. But that SDK is basically the foundation of everything. So definitely would love to have folks check that out. And we would love to participate in the Paris P2P Festival. Absolutely. That would be amazing. And we would love to collaborate with Berty in any way that we can. And definitely the over-the-air system is most intriguing to us as well, especially because you all already are doing that, which blew our minds. We were like, that is so cool, so like-minded, and so like, yeah, it was really like, wow, they are on the same wavelength. It was really cool to see that. So we would love to help with that system. And we're actually going to be sponsoring Build Quest on March 4th from ETH Global. So if you're a game developer, or you're just publishing software, definitely come join that hackathon. We're giving out prizes for that. But for future hackathons as well, we're super, super curious about self-updating blockchain nodes, self-updating Web3 software, and just in general DAO coordinated stuff. Those are things that we're very interested in. And secure auto updates, over the air stuff, and just moving as many Web3 tools onto Web3 as we can is what we're really excited about. And that's an amazing, like, we're super excited about that. We would love to join the Paris P2P Festival for sure. And how Protocol Labs has helped us, how Berty can help us, and how we can help. I'll add that as well. But yeah, again, I think it all comes back to kind of this philosophical push to move all of our Web3 tooling onto Web3. So any binaries that anyone's releasing, we'd love to have distributed over Valist. Any packages you'd like released in a Web3 native way, absolutely. But really, that's the best way that folks can help us, is really just getting their software published, and giving us feedback on, hey, this could be better if I could do this, or for these encryption features as well. That's something that we're very curious about, and we'd love to collaborate on a system for that. And our last conversation was really, really awesome. And thanks for those resources, by the way. But yeah, we would love to collaborate on all those things. And we'd also love to help in any way we can. Definitely, obviously, infrastructure, but we'd love to collaborate on open source tools. We also saw the Go Orbit DB that Berty is maintaining. That is amazing. But yeah, and Protocol Labs has helped us a ton as well. They actually they sent over a video team to Pennsylvania, where we live, and helped us record like kind of high level stuff. They've helped us out with kind of marketing on Twitter, some integrations, all kinds of stuff. Actually, their Protocol Labs is amazing company. Very aspirational. We hope we could be just as cool one day for sure. Oh yes, thank you, Pierre. Yes, that is the video. Awesome. Thank you, sir. And they are actually filming one for ChainSafe right now as well. So that'll be cool to see. We love ChainSafe, so be exciting to see that. But yeah, Protocol Labs, super awesome folks there. Yeah, we love working with them, and we're super excited to be working with Berty. And yeah. All right, Manfred. It's super cool to listen to you speaking about valist. What's the recipe is be as cool as you are? Enthusiasm, energy, just a joke, but well, I'm flattered. Thank you very much. I wouldn't say cool, but excited for sure. Yes, excited for sure. Yeah, just I love to meet new people and to share these awesome things. And I'm always super heartwarmed by the fact that we're all like-minded, and we're all building the future together. So it's super exciting. I'm just constantly inspired. So that's where all that excitement comes from. Awesome. But anyway, I think we're coming up on time here, and definitely super happy to answer any other questions. Definitely come check us out. Come join our community, and yeah, come join that hackathon if you're publishing stuff. Definitely would love to see you there as well. Thank you, hasta luego. And thank you, Chris. Chris is one of our OG supporters. So yeah, thank you, Chris. Sweet. But anyway, yeah, I'm always happy to talk Web3. If anyone, in our community, we do a lot of like, just, hands-on stuff with people that are working on stuff. So definitely come share what you're building, and see how we can help plug you into other communities or other folks. Or if you're looking to start a project, definitely come check us out. We'd love to help any way that we can. But anyway, thank you all so much for joining. It is an absolute honor, absolute pleasure. Yeah, we'd love to see you. And again, thank you from the Berty team for hanging out with us, and we're super looking forward to collaborating.
Thanks to you and to your team for your work. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, I guess we'll give 2 minutes back to your lives, and again, come reach out, come hang out with us, and we'll talk soon. All right. Thanks, everyone.